let's get started. I want to go. I want to do a little bit of what we did last week. I want to go through some things and kind of teach you a little bit as we go along. I think we talked about that a little bit. So again, thank you for coming back. Welcome back for those of you brave enough to come back this week, and welcome to the people that are making it for the first time this week. Um, I think we've scheduled a total of maybe 10 weeks. That's subject to change. We may add a few more if the demand is there. If that's something that everybody wants, we can certainly keep going. Um, so I want to recap a little bit from last week. So this should help you if you weren't here, as well as the people who were here. Last week we talked about mindfulness, about the definition of mindfulness. And mindfulness is basically awareness. And the definition of awareness is fluid. And what I mean by that is the words of the definition may not change. It's published in a book, but the understanding of mindfulness does change. And the more you become aware, the more you practice this, the more we talk about that your understanding should change, and it should change in time and as you practice, as you grow. And for example, I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say most of the people who were here last week, your understanding of mindfulness and awareness has probably already changed just off the one session. And that's what I'm talking about here. It's one of those things that your understanding should grow significantly throughout time. And that's why mindfulness, meditation, yoga, those type of things, that's why they're called practice, because we never really get there. And so the point is the journey itself. It's not the destination. We're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to suddenly wake up one day and you're this guru and you've got all the answers. It's just not going to happen. It just doesn't work that. But the blessing is that your awareness increases. There's constantly something new to learn. There's constantly new epiphanies, the way you look at things. And it makes, in my opinion, it's once you accept this awareness, this mindfulness, then we almost become childlike at the way we look at the world. That we look at the same old things in new ways, and it becomes refreshing. It's like the first time you saw the ocean, or you saw the mountains, or the Grand Canyon, or the first time you saw a particular type of flower, or the first time you saw one of your children being born. Those type of things that seem to only happen once in a lifetime, with awareness and mindfulness and being fluid and changing, we can look at things anew all the time. And it's really an amazing experience. And I think we have a human tendency not to. We have a human tendency to, as we go along, say, it's the beach. I've seen the beach. You've seen one wave. You've seen 1,000. Well, that's not true. If you look at a wave, each wave breaks differently. They're technically different. Each snowflake is different, and so that's what we're talking about. We talked about what mindfulness isn't. That it isn't necessarily religious. This is not a partisan effort here. I am not here to convince you of anything religious of any nature that I believe. I don't believe in that. I would never force my opinions and beliefs on other people. The information that I'm giving you here is factual. It's scientific. It's being proven in medicine and science. I will back that up as we go through. That's the only thing I will do. I'm giving you a shell to work with how you need. If you want it to be religious, you need to integrate it into your religious and spiritual beliefs, then by all means, please do so. I encourage you to do that. I will not, however, present it that way to you. I want you to take it. I want you to take it in its shell, and I want you to decorate it how you need to decorate it to make it fit into your life. That's what's important. We talked a little bit about breathing. We talked about how important breathing is. It's funny that we felt, that we had to talk about that, but I can honestly say it's probably not a conversation that most of us have had very often about how important it is to breathe. So It is extremely important. It is the cornerstone of life. We can, I think I talked about this last week. We can go weeks without food. We can go days without water, but you can't go more than a few minutes without air. It just can't happen. So it's probably the most important thing in our life, and it's very underlooked and underrated. We don't talk about it very often. Um, so obviously it's a life source. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure that I cover everything we covered last week. We talked about the term sigh of relief. And I think we went through in the meditation a little bit. We did a few sighs of relief. I think we have all experienced that, but we have never really paid attention. I don't know how many times. One of the analogies I use. I've coached sports for a long time, and when I used to coach travel baseball when my boys were younger, and I would coach the pitchers. One of the last, if anyone's a Major League Baseball fan, the last thing you see a Major League pitcher do before he throws a ball is what? Takes a deep breath, blows it all out, eliminates the stress response. He now has complete control over his body. He's not in a stress response. Sigh of relief does that for us. And we'll talk about that more as we go. So that leads me to something else. As we move through these sessions and exercises, and as you practice on your own, try to remember to make a point to pay attention to how you feel physically. And we'll talk about that more tonight in our meditation specifically. But the whole point of this is to start to turn our attention inward. And there's a lot to this. And I'm going to make it complicated, and then I'm going to try to make it simple. I'm going to explain to you, make it complicated because I'm going to explain to you what all is going on, but then we're going to simplify and just tell you to do this. Because while you do this simple thing, all this complicated stuff is going on. But the big thing is to pay attention internally and start to pay attention inside, and we'll talk more about it. So I want to go over the stress response a little bit. The first thing I wanted to say is I won't get too technical, but I will throw some terms in here every now and again. So the stress response, we hear the word stress all the time. People, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. And I think we have a general idea of what that means, but I don't know that we truly understand what all is involved. So there's a portion of your brain that is responsible for the stress response. It is called the hypothalamus. And when the stress response is triggered, the hypothalamus sends signals to the pituitary gland and to the adrenal medulla. And basically all you need to know is it activates what you've heard. I'm sure you've heard the fight or flight response in the body. We're all familiar with that. In an extreme form, the fight or flight is when you're standing in a parking lot and someone begins screaming at you and walking towards you, and you have to decide how you're going to handle it. And suddenly you get this adrenaline rush, and you have to do this or that. It's a very basic response, but it's often only thought of in severe circumstances. And we're going to kind of break that down a little bit further. So, what I want to ask the group here, if I can get my chat to work, it looks like it's working a little bit. What are some things that you think would trigger the stress response, the fight or flight? What are some examples of things that could happen or have happened to some of you that have triggered the stress response, the fight or flight response? I'm going to assume that you're not saying that triggered the fight or flight response on you. I think that was coincidental timing. Crowds of people. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a big one for a lot of people. I think large crowds. I know my wife is not a big fan of large crowds for sure. Um, yeah. So you went early. You beat me there. I was trying to get bigger responses out of it, but we are all here for a reason. Um, you know, people trying to confront you and tell you that this isn't a big deal of what you found out. And I think that most of us have experienced that. I've experienced that myself. There was a very good friend of mine who thought he was trying to help, and it really set me off. So, um, large crowds again. Snakes is on my list. I'm getting ready to talk about that for sure. The yelling, for sure. Um, Tornadoes. I grew up in Indiana. I can speak to those as well for sure. Being verbally attacked. Good. These are certainly um, says that she doesn't want to fight, but she won't stand down. And it's mostly family. Exactly. That's your fight or flight. And there's a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to discuss it. But that's a great example as well. Um, but I want you to listen very closely to what I'm getting ready to say, because it's not really any of these things. It is, but it isn't. Okay, these are simply triggers. Ultimately, what defines initiates the stress response is not necessarily these things, but it's our perception of these things, and that's very, very, very important. The definition of perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Logical. I think we all could have told you that definition, and not maybe not so many words, but we could have all come to that conclusion. But is the definition is also the secondary definition is a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something of mental importance. Okay. Now this is critical. Now the second one is the most important to our discussion here. Um, Basically, stress is different for everyone. So, he said snakes. Okay, I don't know how many viewers. I think I can look here. There are 32 right now. Okay, so if we polled 32 people, not all of them are going to say that they're afraid of snakes. That snakes initiate the stress response for them. But some of you will. Some great examples are clowns. Who's afraid of clowns? Do we have anyone who wants to? You certainly don't have to jump in here if you don't want. But I'm guessing there's someone in here afraid of clowns. Um, don't worry, we're glad you're here. I don't care that you're late. I'm just happy you're here. Um, I'm going to get into heights in a second. That's me. Um, Sharks, yeah, I have sharks on my list too. So clowns, water. My mother-in-law is terrified of water. She won't even get into a swimming pool at knee depth without being terrified. It's irrational. But I can see that it's irrational because I'm a scuba diver and I'm a swimmer, but it's not irrational for her. It's her perception. Heights, snakes, etc., that kind of thing. So the most important factor for stress is our perception, because some of you are afraid of clowns, some of you are afraid of snakes, some of you aren't afraid of clowns, some of you aren't afraid of snakes, some aren't afraid of either. My mother-in-law is terrified of water. I go scuba diving. It's perception. We have to understand that it's our perception. Here's where I plug in a great book that really doesn't isn't directly relevant, but it is extremely indirectly relevant. There's a great book called The Four Agreements. If you haven't read it, please get it and read it. It is all about perception, and it is an amazing book that will change the way you see everything. But I'll move back on topic here. So if someone perceives something as a threat, it initiates a stress response. Period. It doesn't matter what it is. Hold on. Lost my place here. My computer's jumping around on me. Okay. All right. So back to perception. We all perceive different things. We're all afraid of different things. What we don't realize is that the things that we think initiate the stress response, all the things that we mentioned here are pretty much extreme. They take us back to physical violence, traumatic events. So most of the clowns initiate some type of fear of violence. I know with my wife, she doesn't like clowns, and she associates that with some type of threat of violence. Snakes are the same way as sharks, that kind of thing. Um, and but what we what we don't realize is that this includes things like past due bills, strained relationships, family stresses. I think a lot of us, not all of us, but some of us can chime in on that one for sure. Body image. I know that we have a lot of women in this group. I'm sure that body image could be a topic of discussion. I know that my wife and I have that conversation quite often about body image, and it doesn't just pertain to women either. I mean, it pertains to men on different levels with different topics. But self perception is extremely powerful and very capable. Uh, we're very susceptible to initiating the stress response with how we see ourselves and how we think about ourselves. Health issues, if we're sick, even if I just had the flu this past week. And that was unbelievably stressful. I had a to-do list a mile long. The last thing I could do was afford to get sick, and it was extremely stressful. I didn't need the stress on top of being sick, but it was there. It helped contribute to it. So the and we can even talk about a few more examples. I mean, we can talk about being stuck in traffic. We can talk about being hot outside and your air conditioning is broken. The cashier at the grocery store giving you a dirty look, someone gossiping about us. My daughter came home from the gym last night and was telling me all about these two girls that were staring at her and her friend and giving them dirty looks, and she didn't understand. And I said, well, how do you know that they didn't think they recognized you from somewhere, or that they were impressed with what you were doing, or they thought the shirt you were wearing was cute? How do you didn't know your perception? Her perception was is that they were giving them dirty looks and doing this kind of thing, and so it initiated a stress response. It initiated the fight or flight. My daughter. She's my daughter. She was ready to go. She was going to go up and just ask them what were they looking at. And so there's so many different levels of this. Receiving unexpected news, and all of us can identify with this. Receiving unexpected news that drastically changed the way we see life and see ourselves, and we all of us here have been through that, and it initiated a stress response. So it's really important that we understand that it's the perception, it's our perception that facilitates this. There's an external trigger. Our perception facilitates this. It's going to come into play later on. Okay. So the physiological components that are responsible for the biological reaction of the body during the stress response. I'll repeat that again because there's a lot of big words in there. When I was writing it, I thought these are a lot of big words here. The physiological components, meaning the parts of your body that are responsible for the biological reaction, releasing the chemicals of the body during the stress response, they can't tell the difference between the evolutionary fear that you're getting ready to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger and the difference between someone yelling at you in the parking lot at Walmart. It doesn't know the difference. All it knows is that you perceive something is endangering you, and immediately, boom, it flips the switch, and there we go, and we're off. Okay? The only difference between the two is your perception, how you can perceive those. Okay. And that's where we come into mindfulness and some of the mindfulness training that we're going to talk about, because once we identify the perception, we can begin to have control over it. And once we have control over it, we have practice. We're going to use meditation and mindfulness practice to be able to conquer those. One of the analogies I use oftentimes, if for those of you that had children, and maybe even those of you who don't remember being a child, or you have nieces and nephews or neighborhood children, whatever. If you've ever seen a child playing and they hurt themselves, they cut themselves, and they're not aware that they cut themselves, and they continue playing, and maybe they're laughing and smiling, or they continue competing, or they do this or that. And it goes on for a few minutes, and all of a sudden they look down and they realize they're bleeding and they see blood and they begin to scream. The difference in the few seconds is strictly their perception. They didn't know they were hurt, they just kept playing. As soon as they saw blood and they knew they were hurt, their perception changed, and the fear response, the stress response immediately kicked in. Okay. So that's a great analogy to remember as we're talking about this. What is the difference? Strictly perception. So our perception is everything, how we choose to see things. Now, I said choose. The choose is a fighting word. I get people to push back on this, and I understand. Okay. But we make this choice. We may make it intentionally, unintentionally, consciously, or unconsciously. But we make this choice. Okay. At some point, we choose either consciously or subconsciously to be afraid, or we continue to choose to do so. So, if I understand it's not that simple, but we need to oversimplify to understand for a second. Fear and anxiety are extremely complex subjects. I don't mean to undermine the complexity at all. There are thousands of educated professionals who are smarter than I am that understand these details a lot more than I do. But I want to simplify it for a second. Okay. So my story, let's get to heights. All right. So I was afraid of heights when I was younger. I didn't know how to word this without letting the cat out of the bag, that I'm no longer afraid of heights. I don't know why I was afraid of heights. I don't know if something happened when I was younger, or if it didn't happen. I don't know. So I can't really say that I made a choice there to be afraid of heights. I could have. I don't know. I could have been, when I was younger, they could have, I got a toddler, they put me up on a ledge or something and it scared me. And so I made a decision, whatever. I don't know. I don't know if this is the case or not. But I was afraid of heights. I could have naturally been afraid. I'll easily admit to that. But the point of my story is that I decided in my 20s that I wanted to be a firefighter more than anything. Okay? I'm a former veteran. I got out of the Navy. I was hospital corpsman. I decided I wanted to be a firefighter and an EMT. In order to even get an interview for the fire department, to even get to the interview process, I had to climb to the top of a 115-foot ladder in full fire gear. And once I got to the top, I had to answer a series of simple questions, and I had to answer them correctly. Now, simple questions are easy to answer until you're 115 feet in the air, and you have to answer all of them right, or suddenly you don't get to move on. You don't even get a chance to get an interview for this job. It doesn't matter what an amazing firefighter you be, if you can't answer these simple questions at the top of this ladder, you don't make it. So I had decided that I had to do this. I had to get over it. And so I made the choice to change my perception. I thought, people do this every day. People climb these ladders. This is part of the job. If I want to do it, I'm going to have to do it. I physically overrode and changed my perception. Long story short, I was hired on the fire department. I had several rescues on the top of that ladder. And I'm currently a retired firefighter. And so we do make the choice, and we can make the choice. And we make choices every day. And the Four Agreements talks a little bit about that as well, about all the choices. That's the Four Agreements is actually about the agreements that we unconsciously and wouldn't. So that's part of it. So perception, choices. What does any of this have to do with mindfulness? Well, I will tell you. Mindfulness is awareness. Having awareness helps us make better choices. In this instance, I was able to train myself to overcome my fear of the heights and climb the ladder. Um, and I diminished the stress response through awareness. Now, I can honestly tell you that as I climbed to the top of the ladder, I was afraid. I wasn't near as afraid as I thought I would be, and I was able to control the fear through mindfulness and breathing and that type of things. And if I were to do that today with the mindfulness experience I had, I wouldn't. I don't even know that I would be afraid. I do have to say I've been on top of that ladder enough that the fear is gone. But I think you understand. You understand? I think you understand my point there. Okay. So this can be done with almost any situation in our lives, every single day, almost without exception. There are exceptions, and I want to grant that. I'm aware that there are exceptions to everything. If for example, if you found yourself being chased by a saber-toothed tiger tomorrow, that is probably an exception to this. But you probably will be thankful that you have the stress response being initiated, so you can physically outrun the saber-toothed tiger or fight or whatever it is that you need to do. But I digress. So with this awareness is the awareness and the perception allows to begin us to mindfully examine our interactions with others and ourselves. So when we're now paying close attention through the mindfulness and the awareness, we begin to see things differently. And when we see them differently, we can begin to act differently. Okay. So the perfect example is driving your car. When you first learned to drive, you were no doubt not the good driver that you are now. You were much more of a reactive driver. And I would be hard pressed for anyone to be able to argue that. We didn't have the experience to anticipate what another driver may do. We didn't know whether to move the steering wheel or slam on the brakes in a specific situation or do this or that. But through years of learning and better understanding of driving, of cars, of how they work, of how people, what to expect out of other people, through that awareness, we gained experience and we're much better drivers. So we can be proactive drivers rather than reactive. And that's what we're talking about here. We're increasing our awareness, but we're only, instead of talking about out on the road, we're bringing the awareness inside, and we're going to start paying attention more what's going on in here so we can start to navigate the streets in here. Okay. So that's a whole long-winded explanation that we're triggered by every little things every day that stress us out. But the big revelation is, as I said before, is that we get to choose whether they stress us out or not. And right now we're reactive. We think that we don't choose, but hopefully by the time we're done here, you will believe me and not hate me for it, but you'll understand you have way more power to choose over what affects you emotionally than you think. Neuroplasticity is a big part of this. It's very real. It's something that we will talk about. It's a topic for another week. But feel free to Google it if you're so inclined. But for now, I'm just going to tell you, you're not stuck being who you are. That's when I hear people say it's just who I am. They get an internal eye roll because I was raised that way, and that is completely one of the most false things that I was ever taught. It's certainly not true, and I'm living proof. So recent science has proven that we can change who we are. As a matter of fact, we can physically change how the brain works. We can even change the brain physically. We'll talk about that more in coming weeks. This is real. This is real science. So I will discuss that more as we go on. So I'm going to ask you to do one of two things right now. Either take my word for it right now and trust me and just buy it hook, line, and sinker and roll with me, or I don't care. Google it when we're done. Look it up. Look up neuroplasticity. Look up, neuroplasticity, changing the way your brain functions, changing your the neural pathways. There's all kinds of information there. So I challenge you to do that. So we need to come back to the ability. You have the ability to empower yourself to decide how you react to a situation. I didn't notice. I didn't say how you feel about a situation. All right. I said react. There is a difference. We do have the ability for both, but how we feel is way more complicated than how we react. So we have to go through how we react before we can get to how we feel. Okay. Um, we it's part of the neuroplastic conversation, as I mentioned before. Right now, we're just simply going to focus on making progress on how to control our reactions and emotions. It's the first step to get to the other one. For some of us, it's not going to be easy. For all of us, it will invariably be an up and down game like a roller coaster. There are some days I am like a Zen guru. There are other days like I'm still like an 11-year-old spoiled brat. So, and everything in between, just part of life. It's what we do. Some days we feel better than others. Some days we have more clarity than others. Um, and so it's just part of it. And that kind of goes with we talked a little bit about compassion last week. We're going to talk more about self-compassion in the coming weeks. Don't be so hard on yourself. You're only human. Okay. So before we start, I need you to listen very, very, very carefully to this. Tonight is going to be a simple exercise. This is not the time for heavy emotional work. I repeat, this is not the time to pick up your heavy bags. Okay, we all have them. I am no exception. Tonight is not the night. Okay. We're just beginning to scratch the surface of mindfulness. We're here. I'm here to help cultivate your practice, to teach you some tricks and tips to get you to think about things differently. Maybe share some information you didn't have before, to get you started on self healing. This is not a magical process that we're going to do something here in the next 30 minutes. It's going to completely change everything. I hope that happens, but I'm not making any claim that that happens. Okay. So, this is a tremendous enlightening journey, but it should be approached with care. Emotions are a powerful thing. They should be handled very delicately. If you wanted to learn to juggle fire, you wouldn't just pick up a couple things on fire and start learning to juggle. Gosh, I hope not. Especially as a firefighter, I don't recommend it. But you would probably start with foam balls, I don't know, pillows. You would start with something light, delicate, and so you can make mistakes and you can juggle. You could get a feel for the mechanics. And I'm not going to teach you how to juggle, but you do get the point. Then you would move on to something, and your emotions are the same here. So I want you to learn these new techniques and practice with light subjects. Okay. If this is where I have to put in here that there are therapists who are specifically trained to deal with heavy emotions. And if you have heavy emotions that you feel like you need professional help, I want to implore you to seek it. It is something that this can work in conjunction with the therapist. I don't know whether you need one or whether you don't. There's nothing wrong if you do. I have seen therapists in my lifetime. I think that if you find the right therapist, it can be the most amazing experience, the most amazing thing that ever happened to you. I do think this also could be the most amazing thing, but it should not be looked at as a replacement if you have traumatic emotions that you need to deal with. And that is, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I just need to make sure that we are all on the same page there. Let's keep it light and learn a few techniques. Okay. So we're getting ready to begin. So I want you to settle in and make yourself comfortable. If you are standing, feel free to take a seat. You may even perhaps lie on your back if you like. If you want to stand, I suppose you could. but I'd like you to get comfortable. So if you choose to sit on the floor, um, you can sit on a cushion, you can sit on a folded blanket, you can elevate your hips. It may take a little pressure off your legs, make it a little more comfortable. If you're a little more bendy, which I am not, but you can sit in the lotus position. I want to be able to do that one time in my life, but I don't see that happen. I don't know. I don't bend very easily. It's probably pretty apparent. Um, if you choose to sit in a chair, please sit upright. Put your feet flat on the floor. You just fold your hands in your lap. However, some people like their hands on their knees. Some people like their hands facing upward. Some people like the Japanese style where your fingertips are touching. I'm sorry, Japanese style is your hands down on your knees. The Tibetan style with your hands in your lap, your thumbs touching. It doesn't matter. Whatever means the most to you, whatever is most comfortable. Just make sure that you're comfortable. You're comfortable. Okay. Now I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. Please notice your posture. Good posture is essential to prevent fatigue, and it also uh, and potential injury, and it also helps facilitate flow of energy throughout the body. And go ahead and take uh, begin to take simply inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. And right now, I just want you to breathe normally a few times, get in the rhythm of breathing. Kind of settle into where you are. Think about the space you're in. As we mentioned last week, you are currently in a safe space. Um, we say that to eliminate the stress response. Um, so we just want you to know that you're here with friends, and this is a safe space. Now, as you sit here breathing normally, I want you to think about something simple that is bothering you. Keep it simple. Be something at work. Maybe it's something lingering on your to-do list. Um, maybe your spouse is snoring next to you, and it's irritating you. Maybe your neighbor's music is too loud. Your cat's meowing at the door, wanting in. Whatever. Something simple, but something that's bothering you. Little agitating, irritating, nagging kind of thing. Just mull this over in your head for a few minutes. And now I want you to pull back from it. Stop thinking about the event that was bothering you and turn your attention inward and take note of how this made you feel. Check your emotions, check your feelings. Are you sad? Are you angry? Did it make you anxious? Check for chemical changes in your body. Did your body temperature change? Blood pressure change? Feel an adrenaline rush? Do you notice any physical sensations? Do you have any pain in any areas? A lot of times people experience tightness in the chest, pain in the chest, cramping. Clenching is a big one. Clenching typically happens in the jaws, in the fists. Scrunching of the shoulders is common. Tightening of the neck. Just take inventory and notice these things. Keep track of them. Okay, so now that you've done this, I want you to remember that. Okay, remember how that made you feel, and and we'll come back to that here in a little bit. Okay, so for right now, what I want you to do is go ahead and sit back up straight. Take a deep breath. Inhale through your nose. Exhale. Do that again. And I want you to take a big inhale and I want you to blow it out as loud as you want to, the sigh of relief. Let everybody hear it. And if you'd like to, I want to invite you to please do that again. Get this irritating, nagging thought that I just placed in your mind, get it completely out of your system. Okay. Now, I'd like to return to normal breathing. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Now, I want to invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose. And just when you get to the top of the inhale and you think you can't take any more air in, I want you to squeeze in a little extra sip. Not quite to where it hurts, but close. Just squeeze it in. Then I want you to exhale and blow the air out slowly with control. And when you get to the bottom of the exhale, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to, just when you think you can't squeeze out anymore, squeeze that extra little sip that you took in a minute ago, squeeze it out, and then return to breathing normal. Remember to continue breathing. Let's keep our awareness inward. Now, as you inhale, I want you to envision the air moving in through your mouth, down through your windpipe, and filling up and expanding your lungs. And then as you exhale, just the opposite. Visualize the air moving in and out of your body, how it coats mucosa of the mouth and the throat, expands the alveoli and the lungs, how the air enters your blood system, your bloodstream, taking oxygen to all parts of your body. Envision the air exiting the body as well as you exhale. Now, as you inhale, I want you to take it a step further. Take the air in into your lungs, and I want you to envision it going into your bloodstream. And let's send the oxygen to those areas of the body you may have noticed earlier during the nagging seed that I planted. Envision the oxygen going to the areas that may have been hurting, cramping, clenching. Let the oxygen enrich the area. And then envision carbon dioxide returning back to the blood, returning back to the lungs, exiting out through the mouth. This visualization is very important. Talk more about visualization in the coming weeks as well. But it's very important to visualize this. You may continue to visualize the oxygen going to the specific area of the body. You may also, if you choose, scan through parts of your body as you inhale. Envision the oxygen going to different parts of the body that may have been bothering you. Maybe not just today. If you have an injury, you have a pulled muscle, sore muscles, those type of things. Please envision taking in the oxygen through the breath to this area, bringing healing, and then exhaling the air back out through the mouth. Excellent. Now, as you continue to breathe normally, I want you to again keep your awareness inward. And now I want you to pay attention to how you currently feel. Pay attention to any emotions, any feelings, and pay attention to any chemical reactions. Pay attention to any body aches, clenching, anything of the sort. What should have happened is that your breathing alone and the shift of your awareness away from whatever it was that I told you to think about was bothering you, and the shift of your awareness away from that subject and inward, and the breathing and its effect that it has physiologically on the body, both of those things combined should have brought you more peaceful feelings internally. It should have brought reduced physical discomfort and or pain, and overall made you feel better. And you did this by changing your perception, changing your focus, changing your awareness, and changing your habits. This is why we're here. So take a few more moments to breathe normally, sit up straight, allow the breath to bathe you in healing. I just showed you what it can do for you. Now let it. Let it wash over you. Each inhale, let it wash over the entire part of your body as if it's warm, healing bath water you're pouring over your body. Take it in. Be grateful for it. Let it go. Okay. Continue to breathe. Start to bring some awareness back to our body. Just wiggle your fingertips or your toes. And slowly moving your hands and your feet, your legs, your arms. Feel free to move as you see fit. The last thing that I want you to do is, when you're ready, open your eyes. If you're still sleeping, just keep sleeping. We're happy you're sleeping. It means you're relaxed. And not like that. I'll take that as a compliment. I appreciate you joining us tonight. We didn't get a chance last time. I'd like to kind of take a few minutes here to maybe answer some questions, or if you want to express some thoughts that you had, questions or thoughts over the entire session, please feel free to do so. We'll hang out for another 5 to 10 minutes, and that's something we want to do. If not, thank you for joining us. I hope you got something out of tonight as well. We'll be back again next week, same time. If I said same bad time, same bad channel, is everyone going to know what I'm talking about? I hang around a lot of young people, so I become very leery about what I say and really show my age, or my kids will make fun of me. I think my firefighter nickname was Batman. I forgot I said same bat time, same bat channel. Um, I forgot I said that when you threw up Batman. I thought, wow, how did that was my old firehouse nickname. So kind of threw me for a loop there. It says that she does yoga a couple days a week. She feels the same way after class she does right now. Thank you. I will take that as a compliment because I do yoga. Um, my wife does yoga, and then I try to do it with her, but I'll make that clear. Um, and then she asks, do we recommend that we try meditation on our own between sessions? Can I do this without guidance? Absolutely. Not only recommend it, I encourage it. The goal of this is is an introduction to mindfulness, and I'm I'm trying to share with you some things that I learned through my certification process, and that I've learned over the last 20 years of practicing. But the goal is to get it to where eventually almost your entire existence is one long is each day is one long meditation, and it's way oversimplified, but it begins to carry over into everything. We'll talk about some techniques for handling interactions with people during the day, when we get angry, we're anxious, those kind of things. So, but absolutely, the more you please start practicing, and don't ever stop until the day you die. Just keep doing it. Great question. You're trying to get a hang of the self awareness. Keep in mind, as I said before, you will have little light bulbs that will continually go off, but there's not just going to be one great illumination where the heavens are going to open and all the lights are going to shine down on us. It's not really how it works. So the awareness will come in little bitty pieces, and but that's an amazing thing. It's like every day you get to experience something new. You get to see the world differently, and so it'll just keep at it. Just it's an amazing experience. Just keep at it, and you'll enjoy it, I'm sure. Okay, we have gone over 10 p.m. Eastern, so it's late. But I want to again thank all of you for coming. I appreciate the feedback, and we'll be here same bat time, same bat channel next week. Feel free to share this video with other people in the group who weren't here. I don't think we can go out of the group. I don't think we really want that to happen anyway. But please encourage people that you know that are in the group that may benefit from it to come. We'd love to have them. And you can watch this video through the rest of the week. You can watch it over, and feel free to leave comments as you wish. So again, thanks for coming. I hope all of you have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.